So we're going to go ahead and get started with the teardown. With the electric power steering, I've read that you can't keep the ducts for the defrost, but we're going to try and make something out of some fiberglass and other random materials to see if we can keep this duct. We're going to have to take the steering wheel off, the gauges will need to come out, and we're also going to have to drop the steering column. There's some bolts under here to remove this cover, and then there's a few bolts that hold the steering column in. I've already removed the lower panel. It was just 2 screws that held that in, and then once we get all this removed, we'll see what kind of room we have to work with and go from there. Alright guys, so we got the steering wheel off, the bottom cover's off. Now if you look underneath here, let's see if we can get it on camera, there are a couple of Torx bits that have to come out. There's one there, one over here, and once these are removed, and probably the ones next to it, we should be able to drop the steering column down a little bit. We'll probably be able to get the gauges out once the steering column's lowered just a little bit, and then we'll have to unbolt the column from the firewall, and then there is a joint on the other side of the firewall that will have to be unbolted as well. These are loose. There's a few connectors that have to be unplugged. As you can see here, there is one ground strap a little further back, and then the speedometer cable. So we're going to go ahead and get those unplugged. Alright guys, so we've got the gauges out, and you can see in here the ducts that I was referring to earlier. Looks like this is the main duct to our side vent over here. And then it looks like we've got another duct that branches off of that one into the defroster. So what I'm thinking is maybe I can just reroute the existing port right here and maybe tap it into the lower part of the defrost duct. But I could be wrong. It could be routed completely different. I'll find out here in a minute when I start removing all this stuff. Okay, so I was wrong. It looks like the defrost duct comes from down low, and it looks like all I'm going to lose, hopefully, is the duct to this side vent, which I'm totally fine with because it never really did anything for me anyways. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to remove the steering column. Looks like I'm going to probably cut somewhere similar to this cross brace. Probably cut all of that out, and this will be the location where the steering, the power steering motor goes. And I'll probably have to build a custom bracket or something to support it from underneath. That's no big deal. I will probably just tie that in right here instead of using the factory mounts. So let's go ahead and hop under the hood, disconnect the steering joint, and then we will pull the entire steering column out and get to cutting. Alright guys, so right here underneath the brake booster is the joint that I was referring to. We're just going to disconnect this top piece right here, and we're going to have to pull the bolt all the way out, and then the steering column itself, which is this shaft in the back, should just slide right out. Let's see, focus. There we go. Should just slide right out. So we're going to go ahead and take this bolt out and then hop back underneath and take off the 4 bolts that are holding the column to the firewall. Steering column. Woo! Looks like I'm gonna have to cut some more. The pedal box assembly is, no, it's in the way. I'm gonna have to cut it out. It's gonna be tricky though, because let's see if we can see it here. Hang on, let me turn the camera around. The brake pedal hinges inside of this box, And I believe this box is going to be in the way of our motor. So we're gonna have to figure something out here. And, maybe just cut a little bit away. I'll grab the motor and let's grab the motor and do a test fit. All right, well, we got the support bracket cut out. Just bust out the Sawzall and cut this bracket out. So now, as you can see, I've got all this room to play with for this big old power steering motor. I still have pretty good. As you can see, it moves a little bit. And with the clutch, it just moves a little bit. I'll probably end up putting some sort of support from here to here. Just like a piece of scrap steel or something, just something to strengthen that up a little bit. But I think the bolts going through the firewall will be plenty strong for it. So let's see if we can put this motor up in here. So as you can see, I am getting a little bit of interference with the motor and the ducting. So it looks like I am going to have to remove this defrost duct. But it's getting in there. It's just a little crooked. So I'm gonna have to do some adjustments. But we're getting there. Alright, so I've got the defrost duct removed. I have mangled and trimmed the small duct coming off the center. And it looks like it actually fits pretty good. It's got the factory mounts. Normally there's just a long bolt that goes across here, but I don't think that's good enough. So I'm going to build a mount similar to the Pirate 4x4 page to have these 3 bolts utilized in a mount to come down to this bar. But it fits pretty good. The only thing I see is I've got a little bit of interference here, so I might hear some rattling. I'm not really sure. And it's resting on this cable, and I don't really like that. So I still got a little bit of figuring out to do, but it's getting there. And I'm pretty happy with it. Alright guys, so here's what we're gonna do. From this lip to the end of this shaft is about 4.5 inches. So let's pull this out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut the shaft as close to this ignition lock assembly as possible. And then on the motor here, this shaft is a little long, so I'm going to end up trimming it down probably about 1/2 inch. And once that is trimmed, as you can see, I've removed the control box or the computer. It's just got 4 wires here that have to be relocated. So I can extend this as far as I need to, and these plugs can be extended, it's not a problem. So my plan is, now that the computer is removed from the motor, I can scoot this a lot further back in this hole. So I have a little bit of play on exactly where I mount this, and I can move forward or back about 2 inches. So once I have that figured out, I can build the mount that's going to bolt to these 3 holes. And once that's built, I can measure from the firewall to the other side of the shaft here. And once I have that measurement, I can come back to the steering column. I can come back and I can cut it at right about the right length. I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere around here, but I want to go ahead and get the front part built and mounted so the steering wheel will be in the right spot, and then I can worry about the back half. So if it's a little offset or it's not perfect, I will buy a universal joint and put it in the shaft in between the motor and the firewall, so that we'll be good to go. So let's take this over to the bench and do some cutting. going to do is, we've got the front part of the shaft. I want to remove the ignition and lock. I'm probably going to have to just either grind these away or cut them or something. And I want to remove the outside housing right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to get in here and weld this shaft to the power steering computer. So once that's, or the power steering motor, once that's cut away, I can weld this shaft and I can build a new sleeve that will weld to the housing for the motor. That way we'll still keep some strength, because as you can see, there's a little bit of play in here because all there is one bearing that supports this. So we're going to have to continue to support it with the housing on the outside. So that's the next step. Cut outside the housing. I'm probably just going to do that with the reciprocating saw and just do it in small stages as soon as I have this housing removed. Alright guys, so update. These are actually super loose. I don't know if they're supposed to be like that or if they are on everybody's vehicles, but they I'm not even having to lock my vice grips. They are just spinning with very little effort. So that's good. It just comes right out. Alright, so we got our collar removed. We have a bare shaft to work with. Alright guys, so quick update. I decided that it was a little too tricky to get everything in one shot. So what I've done is I've left the motor just resting in place, kind of where I want it. And I have removed the shaft from the housing. I've just safety wired the steering wheel on. I put the plastics back on. And basically what I've done, let's see if I can hold it up here for the camera. Basically what I've done is test fit everything in place, like so. And what I've done that for is so that I can take this piece, which bolts to the motor like this, figure out exactly how I'm going to have to trim it and cut it to get it to fit in here. And in my super scientific measuring technique, it is just a bit more than 2 fingers. Anywhere in that range will be just fine. It's I'm planning on putting a little bit smaller of a steering wheel, so if I move it a little closer to me, it's okay. A little further away, obviously the steering wheel's on there. So I'm going to cut it right about here and figure out a way to shrink it down to weld in that spot. I might actually use this piece since it has the similar diameter, close enough to where I can weld it. I mean, it's not that bad, and it's already the right diameter on this one side. I'll probably just trim it to fit right here and then right here, and just give me that step and then incorporate that somehow right there. So I'll get back to you when I'm done doing all the cutting and tack this bad boy together. Alright guys, so we got everything tacked in, it's bolted in. There is a bit of a gap, if you can see right there, and that's going to be for the 3/16 steel brace that I'll be building, so I want to fit everything with that same gap. I did have to grind down the housing just a little bit for the welds and everything. But let's see how this thing fits. Looks to me like it's going to fit pretty good. The only thing I have to do now is make sure I weld it straight. So let's get this mock-up assembly taken back apart, and we will weld the rest of the shaft on there. Alright guys, so I've lined everything up. I've made a couple marks here. Now obviously, as you can see, it's kind of crooked. So I'm going to have to kind of eyeball it and weld it with a little bit of a gap, which is okay. I'm not too worried about that. And once we get it welded and tacked in a few places, we will do a test fit and go from there. Next thing is to make a bracket that goes from these 3 bolts down to this bar. Alright, so we've traced out the pattern for the bracket. Got about the right size drill bit, it's a little bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and load this thing up. Alright, so first hole down. You'll notice I didn't use any cutting oil or WD-40, and that's because I don't want to wash the paint marker off. I am going to trim around the top here and around this corner, around this side, and I'm just going to leave the bottom as the bracket that bolts to the frame. Alright, so we got our 3 holes cut. Next step is to cut the center hole right here for the housing. Alright guys, so we have a 1 3/4 hole saw. That's the same as this pipe that we cut earlier. Got a block of wood to catch any of the shavings, and we've got our plates. So we're going to go ahead and drill this center hole. Hopefully it's pretty close. Looks like I've got it about where I want it. If I have to open it up a little bit with the Dremel later, I can. Let's go ahead and drill it. Have a hole. Now the reason I use WD-40 on this one, again, because these hole saw bits are really expensive, and also I've already got the 3 holes I needed to retrace that bracket, so if I've got to retrace it with more Sharpie before I cut it out, that's really not a big deal. So I'm going to go ahead and go get this cleaned up, get it wiped down with some mineral spirits, that way it's not all oily anymore, and then we will keep going with cutting this bad boy out. Alright guys, so we've got our bracket, it's all cleaned up. Looks like it fits pretty perfect. I mean, I've got a little bit of adjustment, wiggle room here. So now what I gotta do, I'm going to put the shaft on, bolt it in, and then I'm gonna figure out where I'm gonna do my bends in this bracket so I can tie it into down here into this bar. I kind of want to put the plastics back on, make sure it'll clear.
Oops.